Sometimes the backlights I find that I use are just plain old white light. And sometimes I feel like, especially in an environmental portrait, so when they're in a setting, I feel like that ends up making the picture look a little bit too studio lit and a little bit too almost cut out and fake. So one of the techniques that I do to the rim lights, to the backlights, is actually add warming gel, which kind of looks like this. Well, it does look like this. This is warming gel. And basically it's a kind of clear, it's not a gel, it's a plastic that you can see through, that when you put a light through it, it takes on these characteristics. So in this case, this is called CTO orange color warming gel. So it ends up making the light look a little bit warmer. So for example, the shot that I have at G Unit, sitting in a caviar restaurant, that was taken for Vibe magazine. I noticed that when I put the lights on them directly on my test subject, it just looked a little bit too fake, almost like I took it in the studio and I cut them out. And I was shooting right in that restaurant, so I added a little bit of warming gel to the lights behind them, and I think it ended up making the shot look a lot better. And I mean, you can get warming gel pretty much anywhere. It's all pretty standard. And if you don't have it, then candy wrappers work good, or the plastic that comes in gift baskets, that works too. Or Christmas wrap. Anything that you can get your hands on that's kind of translucent and orange will work. Another thing that I keep in mind when I'm lighting are practical lights. So in real life, in a scene, there's a lot of light affecting different things. It could be a window, a lamp. Practical elements in real life change the way that a scene is lit. So that's really easy to forget sometimes when you're using your own lights, like strobes or constant lights. When you're lighting a scene, it's always easy to forget that. So one of the techniques that I do is I do want to light with strobes and flashes, because I like the quality that I get from that, but sometimes they overpower all that real kind of raw light that makes the scene end up looking better. So what I do is just simply add more strobes and compensate for those lights, and make my little strobes and make my little flashes pretend to be those different lights. So for example, at the Panic at the Disco shoot, where they're all sitting in this red room on the couch, I used a softbox as the main light, and I really liked the quality when the power was jacked up on that. But as a result, the light inside the lamp didn't quite light up strong enough. So what I did was ending up using a Canon speedlight and just hiding it inside the actual lamp, so it looked like the bulb when everything flashed. And another thing I did was I got a studio light and put a snoot on it, which is a very directional covering, which will point the light in just one spotlight, and I pointed that at the lamp as well, so it gave a kind of circular spotlight effect on the wall behind it. So doing these kind of things, adding lights in the background and practical lights, gives a little bit of dimension to the set and ends up making things a little bit less studio and a little bit more realistic. Now, since I'm known for my kind of dark and moody style, I thought it'd be important to talk about that a little bit. One of the biggest misconceptions when shooting dark images is just to simply underexpose the photo. But of course that never works. When you shoot shadowy stuff, there has to be a light making that shadow. So what you do is, when you're shooting, suppose I'm the subject and you're the photographer. If you're going to shoot this side of my face, all you have to do is put the light on the opposite side so that it hits this side, not visible to the camera, and it just puts a shadow on the side of the face closest to the camera. So let me give you an example of the shot that I took of the guitar player for the band Silverstein for their press images, sitting in the back of an old car. The main light was a softbox, and it was coming through the window. And when you just look at his face straight on from the front of the camera, his face ends up looking pretty flat. It's not very interesting lighting to me. But however, when you move the camera to the other side away, you get that nice kind of moody shadow pointing toward the camera. The picture is still properly exposed, but you end up looking from a different angle. So I have, in that light, I had a total of 4 different things influencing the light. The first was that picture was taken at real sunset. So I got that nice sunset in the car window that's actually real. And the second thing is that main light, which was the softbox. And the third thing was a light coming from behind to kind of separate his head from the background. And the fourth thing was, I noticed that the front of the car closest to the camera was getting a little bit lost with all this lighting going on. So all I did was add a little silver reflector. So what that did, when I added the silver reflector, was just kind of reflect the main light a little bit back onto the car, just to give it a little bit of detail. I want to talk to you about catch lights in the eyes. What I was just talking about was making the main light far away from the subject, so you get that like nice shadowy side, the nice moody side toward the camera. Sometimes the main light can be so messed up and so far away and out of the way and high, giving shadows, that you actually don't get a catch light in the eye. And what a catch light is when the eye catches the nice reflection of the main light. So I really like this in photographs. I just feel that the subject looks a lot better, gives a lot more depth to the eyes and everything like that. So I really want that catch light, but sometimes I want my main light so dramatic that I can't get it. So what do? I add another light for the catch light only that's on a really low power, so it's not influencing any of the shot whatsoever. All it's doing is just flashing a little bit and giving a little bit of the reflection in the eye. So this is a portrait of 50 Cent that I took for Vibe magazine, and I really liked the way that the main light looked on his face. It was just a silver beauty dish, and I really liked the way it looked on his face, really edgy, really contrasted skin. But the problem was, because he was wearing a hat, it actually ended up blocking out the light from hitting his eyes. So what I did to compensate that was I still had my light on full power, my main light, but I got another additional light with a little strip softbox on it on a very low power, so low that it wouldn't influence how that light looked and it wouldn't flatten it out, but high enough that it would still give a little flicker in his eye. And I had someone just hold it right near his face, right near the camera, so that when I flashed, the main light would still be influencing his skin and all the shadows, but in his eyes you would still see just a little glimmer, a little gleam in the eyes, just to give the portrait some depth. Sometimes in photographs, the actual ambient lighting of the scene just happens to look good, especially with window light. So for example, let's take this shot of Panic at the Disco behind a bunch of windows. If I were just to sync my camera to the flashes only at like 200th of a second, 1/60th of a second, then those windows would look kind of boring. No light would be coming from them whatsoever. So what I did was I thought, hey, I could use these window lights as actually backlights. So I want to use my camera to suck in this ambient light. So what I did was a technique called dragging the shutter. So I mounted the camera down on a tripod so it doesn't move, okay? And I had it pretty low just for a nice angle. And I dragged the shutter so it's a lot longer than just clicking. The shutter is actually open for a long time, absorbing in all the light. So that light from the window is just kind of blasting in over and over again. But my main light is still flashing just for a little tiny pop. So it's still influencing the front of them, and then I'm just giving the camera time to absorb all that light that's constantly coming through the back window. So that shot was actually it was taken for the cover of Alternative Press magazine, which is kind of like an alternative rock and roll magazine. So of course the subjects had to stay perfectly still, and to take a magazine cover, dragging the shutter is a little bit risky, but I think I pulled it off. And in newsstands, it looked pretty good.